The manhwa starts with our main character, Tessa, being close with a guy named Hart. She thinks to herself about how much she has wanted to be with him. Then, it flashes back to when they are sitting outside under a tree. Hart asks Tessa why she snuck into his room, and she tells him she left something in there. She apologizes and asks if she woke him up. He says he hopes she's sure she really left something there, and isn't hiding anything from him. She says no, he knows she wouldn't do that. The scene shifts again to another moment. Hart asks Tessa why she did it, why she sold him off just to become some rich man's wife. At Marquess de Juddet's castle, there are voices shouting as the castle is in flames. One voice orders to kill all the men, while another voice guides Lady Tessa on which way to go. The first voice says not to let anyone escape. Tessa is on the floor, scared for her life. Hart stands in front of her, smirking as he says it's been a while. He asks her if she enjoyed herself, living the high life, as that old blue blood's wife. She thinks to herself that, of course, she didn't, it was hell. He calls her a traitor, and she admits to herself with tears falling that she is indeed a traitor. She's a traitor who sold off the person she loves as a gladiator slave. Hart pulls up a chair to sit and tells her to start talking. He asks if she knows what kept him going for those 7 years he spent in that place. He says he refused to die without knowing why she betrayed him. When he saw her face earlier, he wanted to kill them both right on the spot. She tells him to kill her, saying that a traitor like her doesn't deserve to be loved. He replies that she shouldn't think she'll get off easily, she's going to pay him back. He pushes her onto the table and starts to unbuckle his trousers, saying he wants to tell her something. He says she was his from the beginning and it should have been him by her side all this time. Tessa pleads with him to stop and not do it, but he doesn't listen and grabs her instead. She manages to run from him and goes to a corner, crying. She tells him not to come any closer. He asks her if he scares her and if he's that repulsive to her. She trembles, apologizing to him. He kicks the table and says she's cruel. 7 years ago, at the orphanage where Tessa lives, the madam calls her over. The madam asks Tessa to sit with her and her husband. Her husband tells Tessa that he has good news. He says the benefactor of the orphanage, the Baron, is looking for a maid for his daughter. Her ladyship is in delicate health and needs a maid to assist her on her journey to the capital. The Baron's daughter has her heart set on a maid with red hair, just like Tessa's. He says if she accepts, the Baron's household is willing to take Hert on as a squire. Tessa thinks to herself that if it means she and Hert can always be together, she's willing. She tells him she agrees, and he smiles sinisterly, saying it's a wonderful opportunity. He presents a document, and says they just need her thumbprint now. She asks what the document says, and he reassures her, saying it's just a formality. He insists all they need is her thumbprint, and to ensure she gets Hert's thumbprint too. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to go together. He emphasizes she mustn't tell anyone about this. It's the reason Tessa sneaked into Hert's room to secretly take his thumbprint. She thinks to herself that she knows this will make him happy, because it's his dream to become a knight. He'll understand when she explains everything later. A few days later, the man tells her she has to leave today. He asks what's the point of her waiting around. He tells her she'll meet Hert soon enough there. She says there's something she needs to say to Hert. He suggests she leave him a letter since she never learned to write. He advises her to just tell him what she wants to say. Inside the carriage, the Lady Tessa was supposed to work for says how stupid she can be. She wonders why anyone would want an orphan like her as a maid. She declares that Tessa will become the Marquess's concubine instead. She mentions hearing that another like Tessa is coming as a gladiator slave. She warns Tessa not to pretend she doesn't know about that either. Tessa realizes the lady is talking about Hert, who is now a slave and not a knight's squire. She returns to confront the man, who calls her foolish. She asks him how could he do this, and he replies that she wanted it. He questions if she still doesn't understand. He supposes not, otherwise she wouldn't have put her thumbprint on a contract she couldn't read. It's because of her that Hert was sold as a slave. 3 years later, a letter had arrived for Tessa. She had asked the servant if the letter said the person was well. He had told her he thought he mentioned it was not good news. Hert of Fitzrold had been killed in combat, as it said right there. She had trembled as he had explained it was a common fate for gladiator slaves. He was afraid. She had asked herself inwardly if Hert was dead. It couldn't be possible. She wanted to be happy with him. Presently, she collapsed on the ground, crying heavily. Eventually, she begged Hert to kill her. Later, as they walk, Deputy Rang Jeffrey tells Hert that their report is ready. He mentions they've cleared the castle of spies and supporters of the Marquess, except for those in the annex. There's nothing else major to report. Hert then asks about Lord Ferdale, and Jeffrey responds they are still chasing him. They think they'll catch him today since he couldn't have gotten far. As Hert opens a drawer, Jeffrey asks if he's searching for something. Hert replies it's personal, and tells him to mind his own business. He holds up a ring, and Jeffrey comments that it's a wedding ring. Seeing all the ladies in the annex, Jeffrey isn't surprised there are so many. What does surprise him, though, is the ring itself. It's too plain. He wonders aloud how someone could marry the Marquess de Juttet with such a simple ring. As Hert thinks about Tessa, he tosses a box of jewelry on the floor. Jeffrey asks what he's up to, suggesting they could sell the jewelry for money. Hert waves off the idea, saying it's just pocket change. Jeffrey insists it's not about the money, and instructs a servant to retrieve the box that had just fallen. Hert spots the notebook he was sent to find. He thinks to himself that the woman who sent him must have known Tessa was here all along and sent him on purpose. Jeffrey interrupts, asking Hert what their plans are for the ladies in the annex. Hert replies that they'll make their report and wait for further instructions. If nothing specific comes up, they'll decide what to do next themselves. Hert remembers how earlier Tessa was pleading with him. He decides that Jeffrey should bring Tessa to him as soon as she wakes up. In Tessa's bedroom, as she opens her eyes, she sees Manny, her maid, who asks how she's feeling. Tessa simply requests water. Manny quickly brings water to Tessa and helps her drink, mentioning she has a fever and should rest. Tessa asks where she is, and Manny explains they are in the annex now. They've moved everyone from the household here. Manny remarks on the chaotic past few days, with everyone feeling scared. It turns out the new lord isn't as bad as they feared. Tessa realizes Hert is now the new lord of the Juttet estate. She starts shaking, and Manny hurries off to fetch a doctor. In her thoughts, Tessa wonders why Hert spared her life if she's no use to him. What could he possibly want from her? She recalls their last meeting and acknowledges that he's just a man after all. She shouldn't be surprised. It's not like she has anything to lose. At least this way, she thinks, there's something she can do to help Hert. A guard enters, insisting that Tessa needs to go with him immediately. Manny explains that Tessa is still unwell, but the guard says he's just following Sir Hert's orders, and will use force if necessary. Tessa reassures Manny that it's okay, and believes Hert must have his reasons. She attempts to stand up, but she wobbles, needing Maggie's support as she walks. Another woman bursts into the room and asks Tessa where she's going. She's noticeably pregnant. She's Janet, the 7th wife of the Marquess de Juttet. Tessa questions why Janet is here, but she takes Janet's hands. Janet comments that Tessa's hands are cold, but Tessa insists she's fine and needs to go. No, she must go. The guard accompanies Tessa and tells her to wait in one of the office rooms. She starts coughing and thinks to herself that it hurts. Those lashes on her back are really painful. She struggles to breathe. Maybe it's her fever acting up. But no, she tells herself she has to snap out of it because Hert might think she's pretending. Glancing at the portrait of the Marquess, she mutters that he was a terrible man. Hert enters the room and mentions that he's the one who killed the Marquess. Tessa calls out his name, and he admits he wants to kill her too, yet something stops him. He finds it strange and asks her what he should do with her now. Tessa drops to her knees, saying he can do whatever he wants. She feels she can never make up for all her wrongs, but she's willing to do anything to try. If you want to see what happens next, drop a comment, or gives a thumbs up expressing your interest in a part 2. Your comments and likes helps determine if you're interested in really seeing a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.